24 hours. Can you believe that? Just one single day. That's how long the U.S. Army bragged loudly that it had captured a real, honest-to-goodness, flying disc. They were practically shouting it from the rooftops. But then, barely a full day later, they sheepishly, awkwardly, almost comically, called it a weather balloon. Talk about a plot twist, right? But here's the real punchline, the one that's even wilder than the initial headline. The debris they found wasn't from some little green men cruising through our atmosphere. Nope. It was from a top-secret balloon train, a covert operation built to eavesdrop on Soviet A-bomb tests. And get this, the metal fragments left behind from that incident are still teaching materials scientists brand new tricks, even today. So yeah, you're gonna want to stick around for this because the actual lab results? They're way weirder and way cooler than any of the UFO myths you've ever heard. Imagine this, it's July 8th, 1947. Radios across America are crackling, not with music, but with bombshell news. Army Air Corps seizes flying saucer, the bulletins scream. Picture it. Families huddled around their living room radios, eyes wide, imagining Martian chrome and little alien pilots. Newspapers, actual physical newspapers, printed above the fold, in giant, bold letters. This wasn't some whispered rumor. This was official front-page news. It all started when a rancher named Mac Brazel stumbled upon something truly bizarre in his sheep pasture near Roswell, New Mexico. He gathered up handfuls of strange, lightweight scraps, foil, rubber, balsa wood sticks, stuff that just didn't look like anything he'd ever seen. He brought them into town, and soon enough, the base intelligence officer, Major Jesse Marcel, was posing proudly with the debris on a shuttered loading dock. He genuinely believed they had something extraordinary. The world was on the brink of discovering extraterrestrial life, or so it seemed. Then, the very next afternoon, just as the global frenzy was hitting its peak, the same military brass, the same officials who'd just confirmed a flying disc, held up a flimsy, almost ridiculous-looking radar target. And with a straight face, they basically said, "Oops, our bad, folks." Just a balloon. Nothing to see here. From flying saucer crash to just a weather balloon in one single news cycle. It wasn't just a retraction, it was a cultural event. This sudden, jarring shift, the abrupt downplaying of something so sensational, cemented Roswell not just as a crash site in people's minds, but as a deep, enduring cultural fault line. It planted the seed of doubt, the idea that maybe, just maybe, the government wasn't telling us everything. And that seed? It grew into a full-blown forest of conspiracy theories. But what was really going on behind the scenes? While the public was reeling from the saucer-to-balloon switcheroo, generals were in a full-blown panic. And here's the kicker. They weren't worried about aliens landing on Earth. Not even a little bit. Their terror was far more terrestrial. They were absolutely terrified that the Soviets, their Cold War adversaries, would discover Project Mogul. Mogul was a classified, incredibly ambitious effort. Its goal? To loft these absolutely massive, 600-foot-long trains of neoprene balloons, each one carrying acoustic sensors, high up into the jet stream. Think about that for a second. A balloon train, stretching 2 football fields long, floating silently through the upper atmosphere. The science behind it was ingenious for its time. These sensors were designed to pick up infrasound waves, sounds so low frequency that humans can't hear them, generated by nuclear detonations thousands of miles away. The idea was to bounce these sound waves off the upper atmosphere, essentially using the sky itself as a giant ear, giving the US crucial intelligence on Soviet atomic bomb tests. And the payloads? They included radar reflectors, which were basically just glued aluminum foil and Scotch-Light tape. Sounds familiar, right? Because these were the exact materials rancher Mac Brazel found tangled in the sagebrush. Project Mogul flights launched from White Sands, New Mexico, and were designed to drift northeast. But as you can imagine with such experimental technology, things often went wrong. These massive balloon trains frequently shredded and broke apart high above the desert. Flight number 4, launched on June 4, 1947, was one of those unfortunate cases. It simply disappeared from tracking sheets. Its predicted landing ellipse, the area where it was expected to come down, clipped right across the Foster Ranch, Mac Brazel's property. So what was the mystery debris that sparked a global phenomenon? It was simply an incredibly expensive, highly classified spy balloon that had a really bad day and missed its recovery crew. Not quite as exciting as Little Green Men, but a whole lot more historically significant. So let's get down to the actual evidence. What did the scientists at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base later catalog when they finally got their hands on the remains of this infamous crash? And why did they confuse everyone so much initially? First, there were strips of what looked like aluminum polymer laminate. Now, to Mac Brazel or anyone else in 1947, this stuff was just weird. It felt different and looked different. But scientifically, it made perfect sense. This material was heat-bonded, specifically engineered to resist the brutal stratospheric cold at 60,000 feet. It wasn't just aluminum foil, it was a composite, designed for extreme conditions. It was advanced, yes, but advanced terrestrial technology. Then you had the neoprene reinforcing tape. This is where things got really confusing for the ranchers. They swore up and down, this wasn't rubber. And they were kind of right in a way. After weeks of intense UV exposure in the harsh New Mexico sun, this specialized neoprene would degrade, oozing a grayish, almost gooey substance. Regular rubber, like from a tire, doesn't do that. So, when Brazel and others tried to stretch or tear it, and it behaved unlike any rubber they knew, it fueled the mystery. But the gray goo was just a chemical reaction, not alien slime. Next, there were balsa struts. These were lightweight, yet surprisingly sturdy pieces of wood. What made them odd? They were dipped in a slurry of phenolic resin and powdered lead. This gave them an unusually high density for balsa wood, making them feel heavier than they looked, and giving them a peculiar, almost metallic rigidity. Why would balsa wood be so dense and strong? Because it was part of a meticulously engineered structure designed to withstand extreme atmospheric forces. And finally, perhaps the most visually striking and alien component, a honeycomb of paper-thin foil etched with purple stripes. These weren't hieroglyphics from an alien language, as some theories later suggested. These were actually calibration marks. Imagine a scientific instrument that needs precise measurements from the ground. These stripes allowed optical trackers to estimate the balloon's altitude with incredible accuracy. They were a sophisticated piece of optical engineering, not some cosmic writing system. So, no titanium hulls, no memory alloy rivets from another galaxy, and definitely no hieroglyphics, unless you count the rather flowery tape from a New York wallpaper factory, which the military actually requisitioned when their usual Scotch tape ran short. Yes, you heard that right. A wallpaper factory. The mundane truth is often far more amusing than the wildest fiction, isn't it? Fast forward nearly 50 years to 1996. The Roswell legend has grown into a pop culture phenomenon. And then a new piece of the puzzle emerges, one that seems to scream alien technology. A Denver DJ mails Tom DeLonge, a prominent figure in the UFO community, a thumb-sized shard of metal. This shard is coated in a silvery gray bismuth magnesium zinc alloy. DeLonge, naturally, gifts it to the legendary radio host Art Bell, who, with his characteristic flair, dubs the fragments Art's parts. Under an electron microscope, this material reveals something truly extraordinary. Lamellar layers that, when bent or deformed, actually spring back into their original shape. This is classic shape memory behavior. Aha! The UFO enthusiasts cried. Instant alien alloy, proof! It seemed undeniable. How could 1940s human technology possess such advanced properties? But here's where science steps in, calmly and meticulously. Independent labs, including those at the University of Texas and the Institute for Advanced Materials, got their hands on these samples. And what did they find? They conducted exhaustive isotopic analysis, which is basically like taking a chemical fingerprint of the material. And every single fingerprint pointed to terrestrial isotope ratios. This wasn't from another planet, it was from Earth. Further analysis revealed the alloy wasn't some extraterrestrial marvel, but a specific 1940s trade recipe. 70% magnesium, 20% bismuth, 10% zinc, plus a trace of antimony. It was a known, albeit specialized, human alloy. So where did the memory effect come from? This is the cool part. The bounce, or shape memory, comes from a metastable hexagonal phase that forms when the molten alloy is quenched, rapidly cooled, at an incredibly precise rate, 300 degrees Celsius per second. And guess what? That kind of rapid quenching is entirely achievable in a balloon factory's industrial soldering vat. Not in a flying saucer, but in a very earthly, very mundane manufacturing process. The bottom line? This memory effect was a wartime metallurgy hack, a clever bit of engineering designed to make materials more resilient, not extraterrestrial nanotech. It was a testament to human ingenuity during a time of global conflict, not evidence of visitors from beyond. Okay, so we've talked about the memory metal myth, but what about the original debris? The stuff Mac Brazel found? For decades, it was a source of debate, even after the Project Mogul revelations. Could there still be some alien residue, some unidentifiable element? Then, in 2019, researchers at the University of California decided to put the lingering questions to rest once and for all. They got their hands on surviving Mogul foil, not just some random piece, but foil from an unopened crate that had been sitting in an army warehouse for decades. This was pristine, undeniable material direct from the source. They subjected it to neutron activation analysis, a highly sensitive technique that can identify even trace elements within a material. It's like giving the material a full body scan to see every single atom. And what did they find? They detected chlorine at 0.3. Now, why is that significant? It's a telltale sign of neoprene degradation. Remember that gray goo the ranchers described? The chlorine was a chemical fingerprint of that very process, confirming the material's age and composition. They also found cadmium, an element that was commonly used in manufacturing until it was banned post-1970 due to environmental regulations. The presence of cadmium was a definitive timestamp, proving the sample predated modern environmental rules, firmly placing it in the 1940s. Even more crucially, they looked for strontium-90, a common fission product. Why? Because if this was an alien craft, especially one that could travel interstellar distances, some theories suggested it might be nuclear-powered. The absence of strontium-90? It absolutely ruled out nuclear propulsion. No exotic power source here. Every single elemental ratio, every tiny chemical signature, matched the Project Mogul bill of materials archived at the National Archives. It was a perfect match. Science 1, saucer 0. The case, from a purely scientific standpoint, was closed. So, if it was just a balloon, why the massive secrecy? Why the quick retraction, and the subsequent decades of official silence that only fueled the alien theories? The answer, ironically, is far more terrifying and complex than little green corpses. Cold War paranoia. The year is 1947. The United States has just dropped atomic bombs, ending World War II. But now, a new, chilling conflict is brewing with the Soviet Union. The Soviets are racing to develop their own atomic weapons, and the US is desperate for any intelligence on their progress. Project Mogul was a critical, cutting-edge surveillance program designed to give the US an invaluable edge. If the Soviets learned that the US could detect their nuclear blasts using infrasound, they could simply schedule their tests under specific weather fronts or atmospheric conditions that would mask the signal. Suddenly, a multi-million-dollar top-secret intelligence program would be rendered useless. This wasn't about hiding aliens. It was about protecting national security at a time when the world stood on the precipice of nuclear annihilation. That's why every aspect of Project Mogul was shrouded in absolute secrecy. Its budget line was buried deep within meteorological equipment spending, a classic misdirection tactic. Its recovery crews, if a balloon crashed, were dressed in civilian overalls, blending in as much as possible. And crash sites? They were sanitized and cleared of every scrap of evidence within hours. Anyone who witnessed anything unusual was quietly but firmly reminded of the Espionage Act, a serious threat carrying severe penalties for disclosing classified information. The 1947 secrecy wasn't about covering up an alien visitation, it was about keeping Stalin guessing, about maintaining a vital intelligence advantage in a terrifying, uncertain world. Decades later, long after the official explanations and scientific analyses, the stories persist. Townsfolk, some of whom were children at the time, still recall memory foil that would crinkle and then smooth itself out, or indestructible beams that couldn't be cut or bent. And here's the thing about memory, it's plastic. It's incredibly malleable. Time, suggestion, and the desire for a good story can twist and reshape recollections. It's not that people are intentionally lying, it's that human memory isn't a perfect video recording. It's a narrative, and narratives can change. Meanwhile, the physical samples, the actual remnants of Project Mogul, sit in laboratory drawers. They are mute, yes, but their chemical fingerprints, their isotopic ratios, and their structural compositions are utterly unambiguous. They don't have feelings, they don't have agendas, and they don't get swayed by sensational headlines. Science wins when hard, verifiable data trumps anecdotal evidence. But why do the anecdotes persist, even when confronted with overwhelming scientific proof? Because let's be honest, they're juicier. The idea of a crashed alien spacecraft is inherently more exciting and more captivating than a top-secret weather balloon. It taps into our deepest curiosities and hopes about what else might be out there. But the takeaway here is crucial for anyone trying to understand the world. Extraordinary claims require not just anecdotal stories, but ordinary, replicable chemistry sets. They require electron microscopes, mass spectrometers, and rigorous peer-reviewed analysis. Without that, it's just a really good story. Here's one of the coolest parts about the Roswell incident. Even though the alien theory was debunked, the debris itself continues to be a source of scientific learning. The studies of those Project Mogul remnants, those seemingly mundane scraps, keep giving back to modern science and technology. Think about it. That memory metal that everyone thought was alien tech? While it wasn't extraterrestrial, the understanding of its behavior, how certain alloys can be engineered to return to a specific shape, was incredibly valuable. Today, shape memory alloys are not just a wartime metallurgy hack. They're staples in cutting-edge medical devices like self-expanding stents, allowing surgeons to perform less invasive procedures. They're also used in everything from smart textiles to, believe it or not, the wheels of Mars rovers, where they need to withstand extreme temperature fluctuations and maintain structural integrity. The way that specialized neoprene tape broke down in the harsh stratospheric UV, understanding those specific degradation pathways is invaluable. It helps conservators today preserve incredibly important historical artifacts, like the original 1960s NASA spacesuits. Knowing how these materials age and degrade allows us to protect them for future generations. The precise way those foil and tape radar reflectors were designed to bounce signals back? That geometry, that understanding of how to manipulate radar signatures, directly inspired the development of low-observable drone skins and stealth technology. It was a precursor to making things invisible to radar. So even a botched spy mission, one that crashed and caused decades of confusion, can seed entire innovation trees. It's a powerful reminder that science doesn't just celebrate successes, it mines failures and unexpected discoveries even harder. Every piece of data, every chemical reaction, every structural oddity can lead to breakthroughs we never anticipated. Despite all the scientific evidence, the myth of alien bodies at Roswell remains one of the most tenacious. Where did it even come from? It wasn't in the initial 1947 reports. The idea of alien corpses only truly entered the narrative in 1978, a full 31 years after the incident. This was when UFO researcher Stanton Friedman interviewed Major Jesse Marcel, the intelligence officer who initially posed with the debris. Marcel, decades later, claimed he was involved in a cover-up and that the debris was indeed alien. Within 5 years of Friedman's interview, a mortician named Glenn Dennis spun an even more elaborate tale. He claimed he saw child-sized aviators and alien bodies at the Roswell Army Airfield Hospital. He even described strange small coffins. And just like that, the alien bodies myth was born and took root. But here's the critical, undeniable problem with these stories. There's zero verifiable evidence. No photos, not a single piece of DNA, no tissue slides, no medical records from the hospital. Nothing. Just second-hand chatter, decades after the alleged event, from individuals whose memories may have been influenced by time, public fascination, or even a desire for attention. Meanwhile, what do the declassified Project Mogul reports tell us? They meticulously list the components: 2.7-pound balsa wood targets and 600-foot balloon trains. And conspicuously absent from these detailed reports? Any mention of a crew, any coffins, any biological matter whatsoever. This is where Occam's razor slices clean. The simplest explanation that fits all the verifiable facts is almost always the correct one. And in this case, the simplest explanation is a crashed spy balloon, not a spaceship full of deceased aliens. So what is Roswell really? It's not just a relic of a past event. It's a mirror. A mirror reflecting how secrecy, fueled by Cold War dread and human imagination, can fuse into powerful, enduring modern folklore. It shows us how easily a simple, albeit highly classified, object can be transformed into something extraordinary in the public consciousness. But when you zoom in with an electron beam, when you apply the rigorous tools of scientific inquiry, the story condenses. It simplifies. It becomes a story of sophisticated foil, specialized glue, and the fundamental laws of physics. Science didn't just solve Roswell, it weaponized transparency against myth. It took something shrouded in mystery and brought it into the clear, sharp light of empirical evidence. And every time a lab reruns the isotopes, every time a material scientist examines a fragment, the lesson sharpens. Data beats drama. Facts outweigh fiction. But here's the crucial caveat. Data only beats drama if we choose to look at it, if we choose to accept the evidence, even when the truth isn't as exciting as the myth. So, after all this, what did science actually learn from the Roswell incident? It learned that a shredded experimental spy balloon can seed 75 years of folklore and conspiracy theories. It learned that memory metal wasn't alien tech, but a fascinating 1940s metallurgy curiosity born out of wartime necessity. And perhaps most importantly, it learned that classified Cold War technology can often out-weird any sci-fi plot you could ever dream up. If this deep dive bent your brain back into shape and showed you the power of scientific inquiry, then please, share it with everyone you know. Drop your own theories and questions in the comments below, and keep questioning everything. Except, of course, the chemistry, because the chemistry never lies.